Hola, I'm Jorge Ramos.
And I'm Paola Ramos.
And this is The Moment. Well, Paola, last night President Trump delivered his State of the Union address at the Capitol. And this tradition has been used by other presidents to unite the country. Unite the country. Well, that's not exactly what Donald Trump did.
And that he even took the mic and told Democrats that they were, quote, crazy, which actually what is crazy is the fact that Donald Trump stepped into Capitol Hill knowing that he is one of the most unpopular presidents in history, walking into Congress with one of the most abysmal ratings. In fact, the latest NPR Marist poll found that over 60% of Americans, Dad, believe that they are worse off today than they were a year ago. And yet, Donald Trump said that Democrats are crazy. But look, if you were hearing Trump yesterday, you could have believed him. You could have believed that the United States is entering its golden era. You could have believed that he continues to blame immigrants for everything that is wrong in this country. He continued to blame Joe Biden, of course, for America's ills. And so I think Trump did what he always does, right? Which is distort reality and really create a distance with what's happening and the lies.
Yeah, and there was some resistance. While all that happened, we saw some pushback. For instance, only 4 members of the Supreme Court were present, only 4 out of 9. Representative Al Green was ejected from the building after holding a Black People Aren't Apes sign, and Congresswoman Ilhan Omar constantly yelled at the president.
And I think that can be inspiring for some people, right? But I think if you're listening to this episode right now and you feel checked out, that's normal, right? If you are kind of tired of talking and hearing about Trump, I get that because it's a lot. It's overwhelming, and
It's a lot.
I feel overwhelmed myself many times. But I do want to stress that everything that Trump said yesterday affects you. Right? It affects your ability to go to college, your ability to walk into a supermarket and get groceries, your ability to access your healthcare, your ability to stay true to your identity, to be who you are, to love those around you, to defend your fundamental rights, even your ability to vote in the next midterm elections, right? One of the things that I think overshadowed all of the State of the Union address is whether or not this country will continue to have free and fair elections.
So we'll be talking about it. So today we're going to be flipping the mic again. The Moment's executive producer, Daniel Alarcón, will be joining us and asking the questions. And this is a format that I enjoy, Paola. I hear more from you. I learn more from you. And so we'll continue doing it. So after the break, how we saw the State of the Union.
All right, Jorge, Paola, good morning. How are you?
Morning. Late night.
Late night, exactly. I think we were all up later than we would have wanted. It was the longest State of the Union in history, apparently, which didn't actually surprise me. He likes to go big. So I want to start with this, with a number that sort of surprised me, honestly, and worried me. So about half of the House and Senate Democrats skipped the State of the Union. There were lots of alternate events, the People's State of the Union out on the Mall. And part of me, and I don't know if this is just a nostalgic kind of kind of out of step with the reality of the moment, part of me thought that was a bad thing, and that we should have these moments where everyone gets together across differences to talk about where we are as a nation. And then over the course of the speech, I completely changed my mind. I was like, no one should have gone. And I wanted to ask you how you felt, both of you, about what does it say about where we are that half of the Senate Democrats and the Senate and House Democrats just didn't show.
Alvaro, if you want to start. I mean, I come from a time when everybody went to the State of the Union, and it was a given, and nobody even protest or said anything against the president while he was delivering his speech. This is a different era. For me, it was the most divisive State of the Union in my 40 years in the United States. I've never heard anything like that. So maybe the question, Daniel, is should you really go to something like that? I know we're going to be discussing what happened during the speech, but I mean, do you really want to be there as a member of Congress when you know the country is completely divided? I don't know how you see it, Paola.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question is, by attending the State of the Union, do you normalize Trump? And so I think if I at the beginning of the day yesterday, right, I was kind of following the different segments of the Democratic Party. Some had chosen to stay inside the Capitol Hill. Some were choosing to do their own alternative anti-Trump rally. And at the beginning, I thought that was a good idea, right? There are different ways to dissent. There are different ways to oppose Trumpism, and that's all fair game. But as I was watching the State of the Union, as I was watching that screen, I then kind of changed my mind and thought that whatever they chose to do as a party, they should have done it together. They should have been inside together. They should have been outside together. But I think there's something about the split screen that we saw yesterday where you saw a Republican Party that was united, that was together. And then you saw the other side of the screen. Some Democrats were missing, some were there, and there's something off about that image to me. The one thing that I do remember, right, from the speech is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar yelling at Trump.
Yeah.
Right, her face, she was and she was so mad and so angry. That to me is what everyone should have been doing, right? If you don't want to normalize Trump, then you have to be in his face. Because I think from the coverage, I don't know how you guys feel, but from the coverage, like I didn't see anything about these like alternative Democratic rallies. I don't remember any other image than Ilhan Omar sort of standing up. And Al Green, I guess.
But she was not the only, exactly, she was not the only one, right? I mean, throughout the speech, we were discussing that before, Daniel, but maybe what I saw is different than what you saw, but there were people yelling at the president. He knows how to handle TV, so he's not responding to every single person who's yelling at him. But the fact is that what we saw last night, it was part of the resistance, simply by yelling at the president, by protesting, or by not attending. That's a sign.
Yeah. So when Trump spoke, he mentioned, he basically said, when I inherited a nation that was dead, I think was one of the quotes he said. When I last spoke in this chamber 12 months ago, I inherited a nation in crisis. And then he went on to sort of tout all of his achievements from his point of view on affordability, later on immigration, which we'll talk to, on foreign policy as well. But if you look at the poll numbers, 60% of Americans believe that we're worse off now than we were when Trump took office. That's according to a new poll from NPR, PBS News, and Marist. And so it did feel like there was a disconnect, perhaps most especially on affordability and on immigration, between his supposed victories and achievements and the way much of this would be interpreted by the American people who may not have been watching. How did you guys see it? Did his message on affordability and on immigration, did it land?
It depends. I think he is an incredible performer, right? I think he begins his speech, I think, with one phrase that is essentially like, our nation is back, it's bigger, it's better, it's stronger than ever. And then he goes on to say, the golden era of America is back. And so I think he tried to do what he always does, which is take up the space, get the podium, and distort reality. And he's really good at that. If you're part of his base, and you live in that alternative reality, you do believe that America is better than ever. But I think what's happening is that what the polls show you is that America is in such decline by almost every measure that what Trump does best, these lies are no longer landing anymore in the same way, right? He's telling us that the economy is better than ever. It is true that inflation has somewhat gone down, but what's also true is that most Americans still feel like they can barely get by. Right. What's also true is that unemployment has gone up last year. The amount of jobs that have been added in the market are still not more than it was during the previous year under Joe Biden. And so if you ask an ordinary American, no matter where you are in the country, do you feel better today than you did a year ago, 2 years ago? The answer is still no. And so I think that, this Trump performance works really well, has worked really well for many years, but I don't think it's landing the same way that it used to anymore.
It's not working anymore. I think he has lost the magic touch. There was a time in politics, maybe during his first presidency, when he was really in touch with what was happening in the country, and that's why he got so many votes behind him. Not anymore. I don't think that's working anymore. He's throwing so many different numbers. We know that he's lying constantly. We know that when he's talking about Joe Biden and the Democrats, that he's completely exaggerating, not telling the truth. He keeps on saying, for instance, that right now we have the strongest border, probably. But then he says that in the last 9 months, not a single undocumented immigrant crossed the border. That's impossible. I was checking this morning with the CBP. Just in January, 6,000 immigrants crossed illegally from Mexico to the United States. That's an incredibly low number. I agree with that. But this number, 6,000,
it's not zero. Yeah,
is different than
It's not zero.
different than zero, right? So he has lied so many times that nobody believes him. Even Republicans don't believe him. He keeps on saying that he won the election in 2020, and he's suggesting that he should have been at the White House back then. He's lying, and Republicans keep on repeating that lie. So I think the magic touch is gone, and we can see it now.
He's a great campaigner too, right? I think he makes a lot of sense from the outside, and I think that's his touchdown, to your point. Like, that's Trump's magic, being in opposition, being one of the people. And I think that message works so well. But now that he's in the White House, now that he's in power, now that he's quote unquote part of that elite, you're right, everything starts to crumble. And we're kind of seeing it happening live.
Can I offer a different take here? Because a couple things stood out to me. One is, this is an elderly man with a ton of energy. He was really vigorous,
I agree.
energetic, and the theater of that he commands the space in a way that is, if not presidential, it's very much the showman. You know, he kept doing this thing where he was bringing in people through, through door number 3. You know, like, come on down, like they were contestants on a game show, and it was remarkable. And he had this, I thought, a brilliantly Machiavellian moment of sort of hemming in the Democrats who were there on immigration, when he basically was like, and we'll play the clip in a moment. He said, and maybe I'll just say, like, let's play the clip. Let's play the clip.
So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens.
So he has this crazy moment, and he has the Democrats, they don't stand, obviously. And then he goes on this, it was part of this relentless taunting of the Democrats that ran through the entire speech. And I'm just wondering if you think that works, because to me it seemed like very effective politics.
Dividing the country, right? He divided the country right there.
Absolutely.
And it's a false choice. He's basically saying first duty is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. First of all, the name illegal aliens, everyone's using it. In the past, just a few years ago, nobody called them illegals. But it's a false choice. I mean, you don't have to choose American citizens instead of undocumented immigrants. We have to remember that undocumented immigrants, they feed us. They take care of our children. They are doing the jobs that nobody else wants. We forgot the pandemic. Without the undocumented immigrants, what would we do? And he's presenting them as criminals and rapists and terrorists. And he's completely wrong. So it's a false choice, but it's a theater. And then after the race that we've been seeing with in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, I think people realize that he has gone too far when it comes to immigration. So might work for some Republicans, but I think it was a very telling moment. That's why I'm saying it's the most divisive State of the Union that I've ever seen.
So I thought it was kind of clever what he did, right? I think you can tell from where they put that in the speech that was intended to be like the crescendo of the speech, right? I think Republicans were armed and ready to tweet that moment. They clipped that moment initially. Trump knew exactly what he was doing because he wanted to cement that image in people's mind. That image, I bet, in a couple of months will become the Republican midterm ad. It will become the 2026, 2027, 2028 image, right? So that split screen moment is clever because I think there's two things. He never almost, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, he didn't really mention ICE. He doesn't mention Tom Homan. He doesn't mention Greg Bovino. He doesn't mention and honor what ICE has been doing in the streets because he knows that's not polling well, but he's reminding the audience of the same fear and the same feeling that got him elected. Right. And I think there's something clever in that strategy where he's still doing what worked really well for him in 2016, what worked brilliantly in 2024, which is reminding Americans of the fear of the other and ingraining in people's mind that those Democrats that aren't standing up, those are the people that are defending the immigrants that are going on to haunt you and to kill you and the criminals. And you're right, it may not be working as well, but we know that it's worked twice at least, right? And we know that fear at the end is such a powerful sentiment.
But he's failing, Paul, in presenting the immigrants as criminals and rapists. CBS did a research recently, and they say only 14% of the people arrested by ICE have committed violent crimes in the United States. Only 14%. So the idea of the immigrant as the monster, as the enemy, is not working anymore.
Well, yeah. No, I gotta say one thing. It struck me, if you didn't know anything and you watched this speech, you would think that 100% of murders in the United States were committed by undocumented immigrants.
That is not true.
That's what you would think. And we know the numbers are not, those numbers are obviously not true. We know that there was, this parade of victims who had lived through horrible tragedies. Their pain was put on display to undermine a rhetorical and political point, which is about how dangerous and how monstrous immigrants are. And then it's up to the listener or the viewer to then extrapolate and conflate all of ICE's work with those poor families who have lived through the worst moments of their lives, obviously.
It is horrible what they went through. I agree with you completely. I mean, those cases were horrible, shouldn't have happened. I agree with that.
Of course.
But I'm not talking about immigrants who are criminals, which are really, really a tiny percentage. I mean, you've seen the same studies that I've read. Immigrants are less likely to be incarcerated than U.S. citizens. Immigrants are less likely to commit crimes than U.S. citizens. So the idea of the immigrant as the monster, as he wants to portray us, is simply not true, and people understand that.
I'm not sure.
Of course,
Dad.
I think so, Paul. I think it's changing.
Well, look, I think there's a deeper
after the raids
question.
in Minneapolis, no?
I think there's a deeper question here around, look, at the end, Trump was very clear in what he meant with mass deportations. I think now suddenly the media, and sometimes I find myself doing that talking point where we're saying, well, this isn't what he promised, right? Where we're suddenly saying, he only wanted to go after the bad guys. That's kind of this narrative that we've all made up, right? When Trump said that he wanted to create the largest mass deportation in American history, this is exactly what it looks like.
Yeah.
Right? This is exactly what they promised to do. And so I think, to me, the question is it that Americans are uncomfortable in the way in which ICE is doing it? Is that what is bothering them? Right? Because at the end of the day, this is what mass deportations look like. And if you take the images of ICE out, if Americans don't see those images, right, but they still are okay with the idea of mass deportations, like, does that then suddenly change the public perception back to Trump's camp, which is, I think, what he was trying to do yesterday, right? They're bad people. You don't need to see the images. Let's not talk about ICE, but let's remember the fear that I know you feel. And I think there's something to that strategy.
But again, my point, Paul, is that's changing, because after you see the raids, after you see the image of Liam Conejo Ramos, after you know that 2-month-old that was deported to Mexico, after you see all the brutality of the raids, then the idea of the immigrant as the monster, the idea of the immigrant as a criminal, I think is changing, and many Americans don't like that. So I don't think it's working anymore, not as much. Or there are doubts in people that at the beginning just had another idea.
Yeah.
I think it remains to be seen. I think as Paula said, it has been an effective rhetorical move in the past. It's won him 2 elections. And it remains to be seen whether it'll work again. I want to mention another point that really struck me, shifting a little bit to foreign policy. When he mentioned Venezuela, he had a long section extolling the bravery of the U.S. Special Forces that entered Caracas and took Nicolás Maduro. But there was one phrase that stood out that I was expecting, absolutely. I wasn't expecting to say the following phrase: "Our new friend and partner, Venezuela."
Mm.
And I was just wondering, Jorge, you've interviewed María Corina Machado, you've interviewed other Venezuelan dissidents who've been fighting for years for a democratic transition in Venezuela. For him to call, the new president Delcy Rodriguez and her government our new friend and partner, it seems to me like that would be a slap in the face to those dissidents. How did you interpret that?
Yeah, it's a traición, no? It's a betrayal, because they were expecting not only to have Nicolás Maduro out, but just to have some sort of a transition to democracy. Now, maybe we're expecting too much too soon. I've been hearing that they want to organize elections in between 10 and 11 months, maybe by December, as it used to be in Venezuela, maybe January or February of next year. But there has to be a transition. And the problem with the speech, and I agree with you, Daniel, the problem with the speech has to do with that we didn't see a timetable, that he is not telling us Venezuela will become a democracy. He's concerned about the oil. He's concerned about the money that might be getting from oil exports. But then what's going to happen? What's the role of María Corina Machado? What happens with Edmundo González Urrutia? What's happening with all the dissidents? What happens with the political prisoners that even today there are hundreds and hundreds of them in the jails of Venezuela? So maybe best case scenario would be elections in 10, 11 months. Worst case scenario is that we're going to stay with this dictatorship for a long time, as long as they keep on sending dollars to the U.S. That's the problem.
I kept thinking about our conversation with Ann Applebaum as I was hearing him say that, because I think maybe 5 months ago or even a year ago, I would have been scratching my head trying to figure out how is it possible that Donald Trump is suddenly praising someone like Delcy Rodriguez, right? Like, it makes no sense. Make that make sense. But I think what we learned from my conversation with Ann Applebaum is that there's no real science, right, to Trump's praising of other world leaders. No, he can love Azora Mamdani, he can love Putin, but what connects all of it is that he needs to understand that he's gonna get something out of you, right? Like that's the thread. Right? It doesn't matter if you're a socialist, if you're a communist, if you're a fascist. The one thing that he cares about is, can I get something from this relationship, right? Will it benefit me? I think Delcy Rodriguez is a perfect example of how he sees it. It doesn't matter what her politics are. It really doesn't. What it matters is that he has understood his way into the money, into the oil, right? Democracy, maybe the transition comes later, but I think that's what I was thinking about. Like, okay, like this, like after that conversation, this makes sense.
We're wrong, because we might think democracy is the most important thing for any country, right? Maybe not for him. Clearly, he has different values. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be back and talk specifically about that democracy. So we're back. All three of us watched, obviously, the State of the Union last night. And I wanted to ask the both of you, in terms of the midterm elections that are coming up in, just 6 months, what did the speech tell you about the way Donald Trump is framing the argument for the Republicans in these midterms that a lot of people are expecting that they're going to lose and lose heavily?
So I see the evolution of the lie taking a different narrative that I think is a very familiar one, but I think it's also a very effective one, which is in 2024, the lie that really works very well is that immigrants are invading the country and that you should be scared, you being the voter. Now that lie is kind of transforming into something else, which is Democrats want immigrants to vote. And the reason that Democrats want immigrants to vote is because they want to cheat. One of the things that Trump repeated a couple of times last night was they want to cheat. Cheating is rampant, he said. Cheating is rampant, which again, those are all lies, right? Like what the surveys and the polls and the statistics tell us is that it is extremely rare for undocumented immigrants to vote. Extremely rare, like almost non-existent. And so I think that to me is going to be like the next iteration of the lie, right? That he's just going to be injecting throughout all of his speeches. So I think that's the narrative that's happening. And then what's really concerning is that when you pair that narrative with what is already happening on the ground, what you see is them really laying the groundwork to physically make it harder for people to vote, right? I'm sure we'll get into the SAVE Act, but what you see already is the way in which ICE is intimidating people, even American citizens, right? When my dad and I were in Minneapolis, one of the things that we found is that even in churches that have both citizens and undocumented immigrants, American citizens are scared to go into some of these churches because of the presence of ICE. Right. Then you also have a Steve Bannon that is also saying things like, well, maybe ICE officers will show up to the polling stations. So I think when you pair the narrative with already kind of the groundwork, I think that really kind of paints a picture of what the next midterm elections can look like.
Well, while you were talking about, I was thinking 2020 all the time, because what he's saying is that he lost the election. He constantly goes back to the same thing.
Yeah.
He just cannot take the fact that
He's obsessed.
Completely, totally, absolutely lost the 2020 election. And then he's just trying to make up things and strategies and conspiracy theories, suggesting that he lost the election because undocumented immigrants went to the polls. That is not true. That is not true. It isn't going to happen. It is incredibly, incredibly difficult. Daniel, well, I was with Paola in Minneapolis. We met a lot of foreign correspondents from Spain, from France, from Mexico. And when I was asking them, why are you in Minneapolis? Their answer was incredible, because we want to chronicle the end of the empire. In other words, the way people see us from the outside is changing. They honestly think that democracy is going to end here in the United States. And obviously, we have the accumulation of power on one person. We have the censorship, the attacks on judges and professors. But I would argue that at this point, we are not a dictatorship, because we don't see the army outside on the streets. I don't think the three of us are going to be jailed for saying what we are saying. But the most important thing is that elections still matter. If Trump can change the way we conduct the elections, then we would be getting much, much closer to an authoritarian regime. But the way people see us from outside is that we're getting closer to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I've been feeling for a long time, and in some ways, I feel like the events have caught up to my most alarmist fears over the last several years. I feel like the election integrity is an issue, and he's pushing the Save America Act. But when election integrity is an issue for me, but not in the way that he's framing it whatsoever. He's painting a picture of thousands and thousands of undocumented immigrants voting, and what I'm really worried about is what Paolo was mentioning, is the on the ground changes to the way people vote, disenfranchisement of vast swaths of minority communities and women, relitigating for the umpteenth time the outcome of the Fulton County recounts by going in there with the FBI and with Tulsi Gabbard sort of hanging out in the background as if this were a CIA matter. I mean, those are the things that worry me about our elections. And if we don't have midterm elections, I should also say, I've been accused of being alarmist, but everything that I've been worried about has come to pass. Even if the Democrats win the House or the Senate or both, I don't see necessarily that he'll seat that Congress. That they'll find a way to push back or shutter Congress or whatever. There's many things that could happen that seem unthinkable, but if we really are honest with ourselves, many unthinkable things have happened since he came down the escalators in 2015 to launch his campaign and transform America forever.
I think we're right in the middle of the storm right now. Maybe the midterm elections, many people are hopeful that if Democrats can control at least one of the chambers, that there's going to be some sort of a balance to Donald Trump. But right now, as we speak, this is the storm. We're in the middle of the storm, and there are many different signs of resistance, because we've been talking about the strength and the narrative of Donald Trump, but there are signs of resistance. What the Supreme Court did with the tariffs, I think that's a sign of resistance. Bad Bunny is a sign of resistance. Protests in Minneapolis and Los Angeles, there are signs of resistance. I'm seeing everywhere people saying, no, we don't want that kind of government. And but right now, as we speak, it is the most difficult time ever in democracy in the United States, I think.
So I think a couple of things. Number one, I think that Trump doesn't need Congress to be Trump, right? And that scares me. Like, even if Democrats win, which I think they are likely to win, what we've learned about the second term is that his style of governance is, I am the law, right? And what I do is the law. And I am the one that can dictate what the Constitution says I can or cannot do. And so even if Democrats win, say both chambers, what we've learned so far and what they're doing is that he is someone that truly relies on his executive power, and that part of his style of governance is bypassing those chambers, right? That is how Doge went into effect. That is how they start dismantling the government. That is how suddenly we have no Department of Education, no USAID. The tariffs that we're talking about, that, I mean, what we heard last night at that State of the Union is, I don't care what the Supreme Court says, right? There are ways to do it without the Supreme Court. I can still do this, right? That is exactly how he executes his tariffs, bypassing Congress. Or intervention in Venezuela, he bypasses Congress. And so I think that point to me is that no matter who wins the midterm elections, Trump will continue to really use that executive power, I think, in pretty unprecedented ways. I still do think that we're going to see midterm elections, right? And I think what a lot of these like democracy scholars tell you is that dictators typically, obviously, it depends on who we're talking about, but they want to create the illusion that there are fair and free elections, right? But that inevitably, like Trump or whoever is in power has to be the winner. And I think that's kind of the narrative and the atmosphere that they're creating, right? Already starting to sow this kind of level of distrust and mistrust, so that people are scared to vote, so that people are already feeling uncertain about the election. But elections will happen. I think what we do know about Trump is, A, he hates to lose. Like, this man is obsessed with 2020, to your point, that he is obsessed. And I think so much of what is happening now, what's happening in Fulton County, what's happening with them trying to nationalize the election, so much of that is driven by this resentment and rage and hate that he has towards this idea that he lost, which that's what we know about Trump. This man just thinks he has to win, and that is the only inevitable outcome. And that's what kind of, I think, scares me, right? Like, this man will do anything to win, and he's already telling us.
That the importance of what would happen if the Democrats control the House. He knows, he has said it, that he's afraid that he might be impeached, and then that's one thing. The other thing has to do with, in 2028, everyone's going to be talking about the next presidential election. So we're going to see new faces, new narratives, new energy, and therefore the attention would go, I think, from Trump to the new candidates.
I thought it was really interesting to go into the congressional chambers and on tariffs. Basically say, I don't need congressional action. There's no need for Congress to act. I got this. I can do it. And Paola, you mentioned this, but it also it flies in the face of precisely what the Supreme Court ruling on tariffs was, which is Congress has not only the right, but the responsibility and the authority exclusively to levy taxes, right? The executive branch can't do that. And he seemed to just be like, oh, well, I heard you, but there's other ways I'm going to do this, and that's what I'm going to do. It's shocking.
He said that many times before. I mean, even I think J.D. Vance, I think like a couple of months ago, he was like, well, judges aren't the last word. It's Trump, right? Like the executive, like I think that the mentality of that administration is truly that, right? Like, it is this innate belief that the executive power trumps everything, right? That they are they think that they've, and again, none of this, and we stress this all the time, this isn't normal, right? This isn't democratic.
Yeah.
Like none of this is the way that it should work. But I think if we understand their true belief, that they believe that they were given a mandate, and that in that mandate, they are the ones that are the law, that dictate the law and interpret the Constitution. And I think that I need to remind myself of that, right? Because that is how they, like, to me, that's part of like the main mark of how they're governing. They don't care what the Supreme Court says.
Yeah.
And if we're confused, just imagine other countries, Daniel. No, just imagine being in Brazil, India, Mexico. Can you trust the United States on one hand? And who are you listening to? Are they going to be listening to the Supreme Court? Are they going to be listening to the president? It is incredibly confusing. So going back to my point, for foreign correspondents, this is the end of. It's not the end of America, but it is the end of a very important period in time.
Yeah. We mentioned sort of places where we've been finding hope. And I'm interested in the moment after the midterms. Let's say it goes well. Let's say that the new Congress is seated. And at which point Trump becomes a lame duck, barring any further crazy attempts, rhetorical or policy-wise, to create the avenue for a third term. At which point we have these new voices, we have new candidates, we have Republicans jostling to see who's going to be the inherit Trump's political capital, and we have people on the left, who are profiling to be the nominee for the Democrats. Are you seeing sort of early indications of who those people might be?
Newsom, Paola, maybe? I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think the usual suspects are out there, right? I think Newsom is obviously publicly playing with the idea. Suddenly, like, Vice President Harris is also very openly playing with the idea. I think you have the, people speculating, of course, about AOC, Senator Mark Kelly. And I think, even if you have, say, a Harris and an AOC, I think, to me, the real test isn't just like the real test of the party is like how ambitious will they actually be this time, right? I think what voters are kind of done with is just this, and we've talked about this before, right? Just this like anti-Trump resistance movement. That doesn't work all the time, right? And I think there's a big fatigue. Like what are you for beyond being against Trump? And I think that's when it's about to get really interesting, right? It's not just the way in which they resisted during the State of the Union. When you get into the details of their words and their plans, I think the real test is not just are you against ICE, but are you for reforming the Department of Homeland Security? And I think that's where you see Democratic members of Congress and candidates that have very different positions. And that's going to be interesting, right? Who is for dismantling DHS and who wants it to remain intact? No, it's not just, are you for or against immigrants? No, it is, will you pledge and will you promise to vote for comprehensive immigration reform? And I think that, like, how Democrats position themselves to really be courageous enough to bring the type of change that people are hungry for beyond Trumpism, like that to me will be the test of a Democratic Party that is positioned to win or not.
Let me just bring up another name, James Talarico, state representative from Texas. Everybody seems to be talking about him nowadays. Yeah. He was with Stephen Colbert. Obviously, he's a state representative. It's an incredibly long shot to go from being state representative to president. But the fact that he's 36 years old and that he's bringing so much attention, it means, I think it's a sign of hope. Another sign of hope that I see, Daniel, also the president during the State of the Union, he said, we ended DEI in America, no? Diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think he's completely wrong. I was seeing the numbers in 2025, more babies were born from minority communities than from the white community. And in just a few more years, maybe 20 years, this is going to be a majority country. So in other words, even if they were able to stop immigration completely right now, legal and undocumented immigration, even if they can do that, the country's so diverse, so multicultural, multi-ethnic, that it is impossible to change that. Donald Trump is trying, but Stephen Miller is trying. Everybody's trying on the administration side. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. So I'm still hopeful, not only about democracy, but about the acceptance, the tolerance of diversity in this country.
We'll see. Sometimes I feel that I'm so much less optimistic than
it's always,
Jorge.
we'll see.
So I'm the hopeful now.
You really are.
You are the
I'm
hopeful one.
Yeah. So both of you are sort of resisting, right?
No.
A ver, Daniel.
You be the pessimist first, Daniel.
Yeah, no, I'll take the pessimist hat. No, I just think that the problem with creeping authoritarianism, especially what you were referencing, Paula, democratic authoritarianism, meaning like authoritarianism cloaked in the tools and protocols of democracies, is that it's very easy to lose sight of how quickly things have changed underneath the patina of participation, electoral participation. Having representatives who can speak their mind and not get arrested, but they have actually no power. And simultaneously, they're building an entire system of giant warehouses and camps, and there's an entire sort of paramilitary force that is beholden to one man and one ideology right now. And I just think that the dangers are really grave, and it might be, November might be too late. Honestly, I mean, I really worry about that. So yeah, sorry, Jorge. I want to believe.
I mean, I understand. Maybe it's my immigrant soul that I'm so thankful to this country. Obviously, we've talked about this so many times, because this country gave me opportunities that I couldn't have in Mexico. Remember, sure. I left Mexico when Mexico was not a democracy.
Yeah. And
I promised myself not to live in another country that was not a democracy anymore. So I'm just fighting it, and I truly believe that at the end this country will do the right thing. I just came back from Phoenix the day before. I was in San Francisco, and wherever I go, I see signs of hope and signs of resistance, big and small, of people that say, no, I don't want the country to turn into a dictatorship or into an authoritarian regime. And so I'm still hopeful. I mean, I see the signs that you're seeing, but I just believe that the resistance is going to be much, much stronger.
We're going to take a quick break and come back and talk about what wasn't in the State of the Union address last night. We're back on The Moment. Jorge and Paola, what didn't you see and what didn't you hear that you were expecting to hear, perhaps, or hoped to hear in last night's State of the Union address?
Epstein, Paola, no?
I mean, was the
forbidden word.
That was the big elephant in the room. Are we surprised? Absolutely not. But I think that contrast is incredible, right? Donald Trump speaking, of course, to a full-ish room in which Epstein survivors were present, right? Because we know that some members of Congress invited some of the survivors to watch the State of the Union, and yet there was no acknowledgement. We're not surprised, but we should be surprised, because again, this is someone that not only promised to release the Epstein files, but that positioned himself and really leaned into some of the worst conspiracy theories about Epstein, because of the way in which MAGA really saw Trump like as a savior, right? And really truly believed that Trump was the one that was going to bring down this like elite circle of quote unquote powerful men. And so, am I surprised that it wasn't mentioned? No, but I'm still perplexed by the way in which they have dealt with all of this, right? Like the only way it makes sense to me, and I think there's a lot of reporting that still needs to be done, is just going back to the question, like, what exactly are they hiding, and what exactly are they afraid of? And is that why they've been so silent? I don't know.
Also, we didn't see the women's hockey team, which is important, because they made a statement. I mean, they were invited to go as the men's hockey team, and they said, no, we don't want to be part of that. Again, going back to the idea of resistance that is present, just to say no is the most powerful word in any language, and they simply said no to to President Trump. I didn't hear as much about Greenland anymore. Maybe something's changing. And also, I thought, Daniel, that he was going to talk a lot about El Mencho, this drug leader in Mexico that was recently killed in an operation in which the U.S. participated, not with boots on the ground, but with intelligence. I thought he was going to take credit for what's happening. Mexicans, let me tell you, they're very concerned about the possibility of Trump using the U.S. military in Mexican territory. That would be, I mean, since we're kids in Mexico, we learned about the war in 1848, how we lost half the territory, and just the possibility of the U.S. troops in Mexico is a terrible possibility. So those are the things that I didn't hear at all during this speech.
Yeah, and then just to add, I think then the very obvious ones, which are just what like Americans are thinking about every single day, right? Which is, how do I feed my kids? How do I make sure that I have enough money to take my kids to school? And what does it mean to sort of live in safe and clean environments? And so I think, so yes, he talked about the economy, but it's very obvious who his audience is, right? He'll talk about the stock market. He'll talk about sort of tariffs. He'll talk about these like big macro issues, but he always misses what he promised to do, right? Which is really sort of be in touch and in line with ordinary working class America. And there was none of that, right? There was almost no mention about like healthcare, right? And what people are going through. And so I think, you can sort of dissect his speech in many ways. You can say it was a good speech, it was a bad speech, it was long. But at the end of the day, those speeches are really about connecting with voters, right? And with real stories that go beyond the like gory crime, like porn violence that he gave us. And it's truly about like, I get what you guys are going through, right? Like that, and that's what a State of the Union is supposed to do, right? Like I understand the struggles of American voters, and there was absolutely none of that.
I didn't hear also the importance of vaccines. Somehow now we're supposed to believe more politicians instead of doctors. That is incredible. That is incredible that nowadays they're forcing us to believe, oh, the politician is right, not the doctor. I can't believe that.
The
Anyway.
RFK Jr. was not present at all, by the way.
No, he
got,
was.
I think
yeah.
0 shout outs. No, he was there, but he got like no shout outs, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, because the measles outbreaks. It's not good copy necessarily.
No, we just want to see
and
images of RFK Jr. working out in saunas with Kid Rock.
wearing jeans.
That's what we want. Yeah, wearing jeans. Yeah.
So let's end by shifting gears a little bit. And I feel like one of the recurring themes in the moment on our show is, we can't, as much as we try, completely distance ourselves from politics and from this very troubling political moment that we're living through. But so I do wonder how you unwind. What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to that isn't politics, that isn't all this madness, just to help you sort of stay grounded and feel joy?
The book that I'm reading is called White Rural Rage.
That's how you
Threat to
unwind?
American democracy. I'm kidding, but I'm telling you, this is how much work I need to do on my mental health and unwinding. The book that I'm currently reading is literally titled Why Rural Rage, and I am also folding Time magazine on quote unquote Trump's next move. So all this to say, I have a lot of work to do on my unwinding skills.
You gotta find your work-life balance. I have like several novels I'm gonna have to recommend to you, Paola.
No.
Oh my, yeah, wow. Jorge, are you more balanced than your daughter?
I didn't expect that question, Daniel. That was not planned. Well, I find myself, I've been traveling a lot lately, and I find myself scrolling way too much. But my new obsession is salsa, and
You showed us.
but
Yeah.
Paola, you're laughing, but it's true.
Yeah.
I grew up in my house. We never dance in my house, so I've been taking salsa lessons, and since I don't have enough time, then I'm watching videos of classes of salsa on my phone, and trying to dance to Baile Inolvidable and Nueva York, because I found that dancing, when the music connects with the song and your body, and there's a magic moment in which everything fits and everything is just perfect. And at that moment, I can just forget about the rest. Now you have to say what you do, Daniel. Don't think you can just get away with it.
Yeah. No. I was just thinking that Paola needs to take lessons from you. Not in salsa, perdón, not in salsa, in unwinding.
I have no. To be fair, I do unwind. I'm just in a.
You run. I know you run.
I think
You
I
run.
consume.
You run,
I
Paola.
consume a lot of the things that I'm still consuming are have to do with politics. But yes, I think when I travel, I think what's very freeing, knowing that no matter where I am, I can just run somewhere, and it really allows me to like disconnect in a way that feels very freeing, no matter where I am. But I just wanted to say I have been to a salsa class with my dad. And I went with you. I did. He did. He took me to a salsa class in Miami. And
so
it
we
was
do that
incredible.
Hot yoga. I still play football, soccer on Saturdays.
Nice.
So otherwise my head would explode.
Same.
Your turn, Daniel.
Yeah,
Oh
what do
no,
you do?
I bike a lot here in Bogota. Colombianos are insane about cycling, and I caught the bug, and I've been getting into that. And then I read novels. I read novels every night. I read fiction. I just read 2 books that I'll recommend. Audition by Katie Kitamura. Wonderful novel. Very has this insane turn. It's all about families and motherhood and relationships and art. It's beautiful. And then a very different but equally mesmerizing novel by Andrew Hagen called Caledonian Road, which is kind of this what we call in Latin America la novela total. It's this kind of like huge, sprawling novel about post-Brexit, post-COVID London, and the oligarchs and the power and the aristocrats and the working class kind of all trying to find their way. It's really beautiful, moving book as well. So both of those I recommend. We will be back next week with a regular show, I guess, and we'll do this again soon. As always, I really enjoyed talking with you, Jorge and Paola, and hearing sort of your thoughts as opposed to hearing you on that side of the microphone and not on this one. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Daniel.
Nice. Thank you.
The Moment is a production of Radio Ambulante Studios in partnership with iHeart's My Cultura podcast network. Our staff includes Daniel Alarcón, Laura Rojas Aponte, and Miguel Santiago Colón, with help from Diego Corso, Elsa Liliana Oyoa, Paola Alian, and Natalia Ramirez. The CEO of Radio Ambulante Studios is Carolina Guerrero. Executive producers at iHeart are Leo Gomez and Arlene Santana. Mark Cannon, Pablo Cabrera, and Dylan Unger also serve as producers. Sound design, final mix, and theme song by Elias Gonzalez. Our hosts are Jorge Ramos and Paola Ramos. If you liked this episode, please share the word. Recommend the moment to anyone who might enjoy unpacking these complicated times with us. If you like the moment, pero también te gustan los podcasts en español, check out Radio Ambulante Studios. Our shows Radio Ambulante, El Hilo, and Central are really worth a listen. I'm Lisa Cerda. Thanks for listening.